So nothing better to record right after Pesach comes out than a beautiful Sikha, Shmini Beis, which is a combination of Sikhas that the Rebbe said in 1976, 1979, Tavshalom Vav, Tavshalom Tes. And I want to focus on one part, actually, whatever. When I learned the Sikha, I asked myself, which part am I struggling with doesn't flow, and then I try to do the research for myself. So, the part of the Sikha where the Rebbe moves on to a different topic in Ois Tes, where the Rebbe says, based on the fact that we learn we could understand the story of this Irachatas. But the truth is that the story of Irachatas is quite a confusing story that the Rebbe doesn't explain extensively. Actually, the next Sikha, Shmini Gimel, which we're not learning in this year, in this cycle, it goes much more extensively in that story. But I just thought it might be worth it to go and actually just give the context of the story. And I'm using, in general, I'm a huge fan of the Kahas Chumash. So I'm going to use it to help us navigate the story. So let's remember what happened. This is by Yom HaShmini, the 8th day, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the 8th day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, and there was various procedures that the Kohanim had to do. Unfortunately, Nadav and Avihu passed away. And once Nadav and Avihu's bodies were removed, Moshe spoke to Aaron's sons, Elazar and Isamar, and he told them, take the portion of the grain offering left over, and you must eat them near the Mizbeach, for they are sacrifices from superior holiness. You must eat them in the holy place, Makom Kadesh, Ki Chachab Chabanecha, because these are your portions and your sons' portions from Hashem's offering, but they're not for your wives and daughters. Elazar and Isamar must eat them, even though their brothers died today. So I've been commanded by Hashem that today is an exception for the rule. Now, you must also eat your portions of the installation peace offering of the Shlomim. However, you do not have to do so within the Mishkan, for being peace offerings, they're sacrifices of lesser holiness. Therefore, you must only take care to eat the breast used as a wave offering and the thigh used as an oila in a kosher place, in a place that's not tamei, anywhere within the borders of the Israeli camp. You may eat them together with your sons, daughters, for although they've only given to you, they've been given only as your portion and your son's portion, nevertheless, the rest of your family could eat it as well. Okay, fine. So based on Moshe's instructions, Aaron and his sons, they eat the portions of the sacrifice that were prescribed for the day. The mincha, and the chatas, and the mincha, the chatas, the shlamim, and the carbon of Shevet Yehuda, because remember the 12 Shvatim brought sacrifice. Today was Nachshon's turn from Shevet Yehuda, so they had his chatas and mincha. However, there was one more offering that they should have been required to eat. At least this is one opinion that Rashi brings, and that's the one we're going. There's another opinion that the Rebbe discusses in the next Sikha, that there was a whole different issue why they didn't eat it. But anyway, let's follow the Sikhas, the opinion within Rashi. I believe it's a second opinion, where basically what happened was, this is the goat offering that's brought as a chatas for Rosh Chodesh, because this was also Rosh Chodesh Nisan. However, unlike the other karbanis, this was not an exceptional offering for today, for the day of the Chanukah Mishkan. It was a consistent thing that would be brought going forward every Rosh Chodesh. Since Moshe, when he informed Aaron and his sons to eat the portions, he only mentioned the other ones. He did not mention this sacrifice. So they reasoned that regular sacrifices, they were still prohibited to eat the meat because they were uneaten, because their brothers weren't even buried yet. And waiting till the next day to eat it would be not okay, because this is Kachei Kadashim that has to be eaten on that day. So what did? They burnt it. Moshe assumed the opposite. Since Hashem had told him that neither Aaron nor his sons should observe any mourning practices that day to not dampen the simcha of the Chanukah Mishkan, he thought that they should have eaten it. So Moshe inquires about the sin offering, the chatas, for the Rosh Chodesh, and they say it's been burnt up. So he says, why? What happened? So he says he wants to find out what happened to the other karbanos, and those other karbanos, they were eaten. So he gets angry with Aaron for the careless attitude, but instead of screaming at Aaron, he lets out his anger on Elazar and Isamar, the surviving sons. Why did you not eat from the sin offering for Rosh Chodesh? Was it a problem with the holy place, superior holiness, etc.? No, they said there was no problem. So why didn't you eat it? Hashem told you to eat it. This is the way the Yidden will get their forgiveness. Each Rosh Chodesh we bring karban chatas to forgive them for the averos that they've done. So this will bring their kapara, and you're not eating it. Nothing happened wrong. The blood was done the way it should be done. Everything was done the way it should be done. So why did you burn it? Now, Elazar and Isamar didn't answer, first of all, because Moshe was the Rebbe, and their father Aaron was standing right over there, so they're quiet. So Aaron talks quite harshly to Moshe, and he says like this: why are you screaming at them? It was me. I was the one that brought the sacrifice. I'm the Kohen Gadol. And you told me that I'm allowed to bring it on all the rituals I'm supposed to do, even though I'm an uneaten. So the chatas was not burnt because it became puzzle. It was burnt because there was no justification to apply the heter, the leniency that you heard from Hashem regarding eating the other sacrifices that are dafka for today, because that's going to dampen the mood if I don't eat them. But that's perhaps only true regarding the process that's done in public. It's in front of the altar. It's in front of the base. In front of the Am Yisrael.Ey're going to see it. So that's going to cause a simcha, like we're talking in the sikha. It's going to cause we don't want to make an interruption in front of the kala. However, eating the sacrifices does not have to happen near the mizbeach, just somewhere within the mishkan, and observing the laws of uneaten, of avelus privately, cannot be construed by anybody as I'm ruining the celebration of the day, because I'm doing it privately. So therefore Hashem told me what to eat, but He didn't tell me about this. So I implied that because of the tragic events that happened, I'm in mourning. If I had eaten the regular sin offering, would have been pleasing for Hashem. Hayita b'einei Hashem. He taught us, Hashem taught us that a mourner may not eat meat of Kodesh. Moshe heard this, understood the explanation, and accepted it. Hayita b'einei. So much so, he was willing to admit that Aaron was wrong, even though he only heard it from him, not from Hashem. In other words, he didn't hear Hashem agree with this. In his anger, what was obvious to Aaron eluded him, as Rashi says. So that's the context of the story, which I just think now actually just makes sense. Otherwise, it's hard to understand the story within the Sikha. And obviously, we could just focus on Einaf and the Filui Hadas, one of the many Eiros that ever brings an Yid Aleph, that it's very nice that we only focus on the Asay Toiv and doing the positive, but as we learned in the Sikha, part of the Avodah of Hashem is actually to clean up, in other words, to take out the negative energy. It's part of the Simchas HaMishkan. And therefore, Vibaldas, die dort kennt, wer natürlich zu Yisbarach Seidemen, denik sich ab, shaloye shum lichluch v'tinuf chas v'shalem. There's no dirt, then you have to do it. Which reminds me of a good story, famous Hasidic Shemaisa, about the Tsar and the Kaiser. The Russian Tsar was one time hosted by the Kaiser. No, the Kaiser was hosted by the Tsar, and there was a Jewish cook by the Tsar, and he prepared a delicious Kishke, the real Kishke, not the fake one. Anyway, the Kaiser's so impressed, so when he comes back home, he sends a letter and says, I would love to get the recipe. So the Russian Tsar calls the Jewish cook and says, Nu macha recipe. So he writes down the recipe, sends it to the Kaiser makes it, takes a bite, his cooks make it, he takes a bite and he pukes, throws up. It's disgusting. Sends a nasty letter, it's a full diplomatic crisis. Tsar calls the Jewish cook and says, you're making a fool out of me? Were you going to cause a crisis? The Jew says, I'm telling you, I gave the recipe. He says, something didn't work. And the Jew finally thinks, he says, tell me, before, the real kishke is made with intestines of an animal. Before they made the kishke and put in all the spices, did they clean the intestines? What's the point? The point is, you could put all the spices, all the asay tov, but those has to be a basic sumra. You have to first clean the kishke, and only then will all the spices be appreciated. L'chaim l'shalom.